What's up? What's up? What's up? It's election night, and to commemorate this incredible occasion, we have a podcast for you for one of the most divisive, uh, all-inclusive, and one of the most controversial elections in modern American history: the Trumpler versus Sleepy Joe, as coined. And joined joined with me again, my political counterpart Damian is here with another dub for the liberal
Yeah. Oh my God.
for the
Yeah.
liberals.
The liberals. Yeah. Damian's here. I run a blog called Illusion of Democracy, and today we're just going to be discussing, the election and our predictions. And yeah, that's pretty much just let's get right into it.
Lovely, absolutely, just incredible. So it's election night. We got a lot to go over here. Where would you like to begin, or would you like me to choose something?
I think we should first talk about before we get our predictions should be the last thing because I think we're going to be talking a lot about
Sure.
predictions. But like, yeah, first we should talk about the implications on like I guess maybe some things we find in common, like who we hope wins and why.
I'll be arguing on the Trumpler side, because as a Californian, I'm kind of in the minority here when it comes to Mr. Trump. So why don't you go ahead and explain Biden, and then I'll get on the rebuttal for you.
Are you like wait? Are you like arguing devil's advocate just on
Yeah,
purpose, kind of?
well, not
Okay,
devil's advocate, because both sides are, you know, equally valid in the eyes of America. So
okay, go for it. I mean, you want me to go
yeah,
first?
you go first.
I,
Biden's the
I
challenger, so he goes first.
all right, that makes sense. So like, why I support Biden, or
Just go over policy, why you support him, and why you think others should support him. Basic stuff.
okay. I think the three biggest reasons for me personally, and I think not just for me, but for America as a country, just shown by polls, is that COVID-19, very big topic about Biden. I mean, it's a very big policy discussion today. Um, COVID. We're also talking about the economy, a huge role as well. I don't know if a lot of your listeners are kind of like listen, kind of chipping into the economic world of everything that's going on right now because of COVID, but we're going to probably see another economic revolution in terms of the way we look at economics. The way wealth is being distributed to the top extremely quickly during this recession. Because in most recessions, what we see is usually all classes get hurt, but this is a very unique recession as certain industries like service jobs, like restaurants and bars, they get closed down, and those people lose their jobs, and those people are usually not getting by very well, and they're people of color and they're women. So that's also it's a very social thing. It's a very socioeconomic problem with the economy, and not to mention that billionaires have a lot of billionaires like I don't know about the specific numbers for each one, but I think Elon Musk like quadrupled his wealth in these last few months. I am roughly just estimating there, but regardless, billions of dollars richer, tens of billions of dollars richer than before. Um, and most people get very uncomfortable when I say that. It kind of gets people start thinking that you're a commie or you're a socialist. I think, but it's a very serious discussion that we have to have. Um, even if you're a capitalist, which I personally am, it doesn't make sense not to discuss this. It's hurting our economy, but we can talk about the economy some other time. That's the second most biggest issue. And then in my personal opinion, the third biggest issue is climate change. I mean, this is the most important problem for me, but to Americans, it's the third biggest issue is climate change, which in my opinion is an existential threat to humanity. Studies are showing that we're probably already going to run late before we hit irreversible damage, which means that we're going to have to deal with those consequences, and that we're going to need it. And Biden does have a pretty solid climate change plan and reducing carbon emissions. It's going to be a transition into green energy, which is already happening right now on a market scale. People are starting to invest less in oil and less in fossil fuel industries, but that transition's not happening fast enough. If we were talking about this maybe 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't have to worry about it. But of course, the markets are late. Markets are not perfect. Therefore, government has to get involved, and we have to start forcing a transition before we cause irreversible damage to our planet, which will then cause not irreversible, but will cause great amounts of human misery and even worse effects to the economy that the Republicans are so worried about. Um, and yeah, I think those are three policy reasons. I'll just keep going off here. I think in terms of I think for me, this is a very personal election for me as well. I think another problem with Trump is he acts very authoritarian. He is very xenophobic. Uh, you know, he's very racist. All of those things I think contribute to why I wouldn't vote for him in the first place as well. And I think the most important, I think, is authoritarianism. If Trump is behaving how he is now 4 years ago, I don't think he would have been elected. I think what we're really seeing an unhinged Trump, because this is what happens in authoritarianism, where with year after year it just gets crazier and crazier and gets normalized to the point where even Trump supporters don't even believe what Trump is saying. Like when Trump says Democrats want to, I think in a rally yesterday, he said Democrats want to cut off all of your oil, and they not all of your oil, but all of your electricity. They don't want you to eat hamburger, like all of this nonsense. And his supporters, they know he's lying, but they're just saying that's politics. And the problem with that is that we're normalizing lying, we're normalizing deception, we're normalizing propaganda essentially, instead of praising truth and honesty, things that we used to value in politicians, but now we just kind of left behind, in a matter of 4 years. So, and I know I say that and people will maybe call me paranoid, and I'm not saying that Trump's going to become a great grand dictator or anything like that. People don't, if you that isn't the way you should be interpreting it. And I think if you do interpret it that way, you're interpreting it very wrong. Authoritarian just means that one person is getting more and more powerful. And this is exactly what's happening, not with just the role of the presidency, but with Trump as well. If you guys even followed the Republican National Convention, a lot of the speakers, I think there were 4 Trump family speakers. So it was, Donald Trump, Melania Trump, Donald Trump Jr., just a bunch of Trumps were talking. I mean, the Republican Party is now selling the idea of Trump. It's all oriented around him. Even if Trump loses this election, we're probably going to see a Trump family member run in the future for some office, maybe Donald Trump Jr., So it's definitely not an end. This is a Trump era we're living in. And again, like I said, we just have, and his followers as well are not all of them. Like, again, this is important to stress. Not all of Trump supporters are cult followers, like we see in most, like we usually see on Twitter or on YouTube or on Instagram. But there is a considerable majority of them that are, and those people are very dangerous. They're not good people. And another problem is Trump is encouraging their dangerous behavior, which I guess we can get more specific with. But yeah, those are my biggest reasons why, I'm not going to support Trump, and I don't think anyone else should. But yeah, I guess you can just shoot a rebuttal, and then we can talk more about it.
No, yeah, I totally get what you're saying there. The validity behind a lot of his statements cannot be confirmed most of the time. You don't really have a lot of leeway in those type of things, especially in the age of information, where if you say something that's incorrect or infactual, according to whatever they want to draw it from, it's going to get immediately lambasted, and that's just a fact of nature at this point, especially because we're just so technologically advanced. But in terms of policy, right? I think that Donald Trump has reached a point where, I don't know if he even knows what he's doing anymore. To be fair, I mean, he definitely knows what he's doing in terms of the social aspect. He knows how to rally the troops. He knows how to persuade an audience to, be a part of his message, be a part of the idea that America is made to be great again. He wants to bring jobs back to America in terms of factory workers and the common dude, I guess, as most people refer to as the just average American. And that's what a lot of politicians run off of these days, because appealing to that sense of just like, oh, I'm just like you, and I want to fight for you because I believe that sort of idea, when most of the time their agenda is just to get elected. So most of the policies that they think America should be run on should be put in. Just like how the Senate is controlled by the Republicans right now, and Donald Trump is sort of getting his way with a lot of policies he wants to put into place. Of course, the government shutdown is not really good evidence for him, or the Democratic Party for that matter, in terms of, it really shows the true colors of these parties, especially with Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump. Even though she's not in the political conversation that much right now, I think it's pretty good idea to bring up, like, both of those parties refused to cooperate for such a long time and pretty much destroy the livelihoods of a lot of people, and a lot of people got evicted from their houses and stuff like that because they couldn't pay rent because they were government workers and such, and it was a really bad situation for everybody. And you
Well,
have a lot of overwhelming evidence. What do you got to say?
no. I'm sorry. I'll let you go like you did. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have interrupted you. Just keep going.
And there's like a lot of overwhelming evidence to support the idea of just this going on of non-cooperation between both parties. And to that extent, like, Joe Biden is running on this idea of we are fighting for all Americans and there are no red and blue states, when in like a lot of statements you hear him saying, like, oh, that's a red state, they're not wearing masks because that's a red state. You see what's happening over there, and that's just politics, sort of. Like you said, people are trying to make this message of, oh, that's just politics, but truly kind of is in some ways. Like, California is obviously a solid blue state. There's pretty much no one in America that can deny that. It's just historically going to be blue for this modern period, at least. I don't think it'll switch anytime soon. But in terms of Mr. Biden compared to Trump, a lot of Americans that are on the side of Donald Trump want to avoid this period of strict normalcy through a politician's eyes, because Joe Biden kind of represents this. We're returning back to normalcy. If you elect me, we are returning to a period where progressive policy will be unleashed upon America, and a person who is stable, he is like a reputation that is, unmatched to an extent, like arguably unmatched to an extent, right? I mean, this dude has the Medal of Freedom, I think. So pretty reputable track record here, and he just gets lambasted by Donald Trump, and it works. Like this dude has zero background in politics, zero. I mean, he ran one time in the past, like before 2016, but that was just kind of a sham. And in 2016, zero political background, still wins, and then he's still going in 2020. And America just seems to buy this idea of, like, step away from the politicians and let the real dude or the real American do the talking. He kind of wants to make this idea in Americans' minds that I am the very thing that will, be the leader of the. I watched this Kanye podcast actually on Joe Rogan, where Kanye's message was he wants to be the leader of the free world, and only through the executive office he can become the leader of the free world and spread God's message, right? And to an extent, I think Donald Trump is pretty much the same thing. He's a widely known celebrity. His name is on almost everything across international, like, lines and stuff like that. He is a figure of popularity even before he was running for president. He was just a dude that you just knew. Like, the word Trumped is directly attributed to him, like Trump card, right? You're bringing out your last ditch effort. This dude is everywhere in the entertainment industry, and now he's become this kind of figure of not hate or divisiveness. I think that a lot of people try to stem up this idea of he's the harbinger or martyr of a revolution of hate and divisiveness in America, and I think that's a little bit exaggerated, but true to some degree. And when you kind of look at it from a bird's eye view, the executive office really is sort of like a position that is open to interpretation for in terms of, like, who should be there, because in our Constitution, it's not really, like, explicitly said that the person in the presidential seat has to be someone with years of experience, and they just have to be willing to protect your constitutional rights, and they have to be willing to go the distance and lead your country. And that's kind of what Donald Trump is doing, I guess. He always argues like, I want to protect your oil, I want to protect your jobs and stuff like that. He's trying to appeal to that sort of idea in the Constitution, which is all right to say. I think some people agree with that sentiment and say, you know what, it's not about guns. It's not about them taking away my right to speech. It's just that I don't want to be led by someone who makes false promises. I don't want to be led by someone who says they'll get stuff done and then not even a smithereen of it even gets close to being done, which is why a lot of people felt that disdain with Obama and his inability to do a lot of things he promised, like closing Guantanamo Bay. There's just not a lot of strings to really say, oh, well, I voted for him and like stuff got done. Well, it didn't really get done. Like the only major thing he got done was his healthcare. And with Donald Trump, you could pretty much argue that he got most of the things he said, at least attempted. He attempted most of the things he said he was going to do, right? He didn't get it done per se, but he attempted to. I mean, it's kind of hard to say. And that's kind of where I am on the position of like why people are voting for Donald Trump. It's more of the idea behind it. It's not because people think they're going to get something directly out of it. I don't think anyone who is not like a cult follower of Donald Trump thinks that they're getting specifically out of him being elected. They just want him to be there because they think it's the better message than Joe Biden, who's pretty much supported by. I don't know how to phrase this. He's supported by a lot of people who are it's disillusioned, I should say, in some way. They're like they hate Trump followers so much that they become disillusioned with like the meaning of civil debate, I should say. And I'm not saying that Trump followers are the leaders of civil debate in any way. I am merely saying that in terms of like their hostility towards Trump, it is unmatched to any degree of the likes we have ever seen for any political candidate that I have witnessed on my time on this earth. And in that stead, like it's just so strange to me how like you can have such an overwhelming majority of support for candidates like Clinton and Biden through the media and the people themselves, but they can't follow through on the execution of it. And that's what I think. And that's why I think a lot of people side with Donald Trump and think he's going to win in this next election. That's it.
I don't know where to start. That was a lot.
It was a lot, but it's a lot to unpack because the implications of this election are more massive than a lot of us can even imagine.
Yeah. Well, I feel like first of all, you mentioned the partisanship and people getting evicted. I mean, I just feel like it's important to give credit where credit is due, and where credit is due is the Republicans who don't want to talk about another COVID stimulus deal that everyone is pressing for. They canceled the talks. Mitch McConnell himself adjourned the Senate till the 9th of November, basically making sure there's not even a possibility of any talks until after the election. So he single-handedly, the Republicans, and again, not because I'm partisan, but because I'm giving credit to where it's due, and single-handedly ended any talks of COVID, allowing people to fall deeper into poverty and allowing more people, fresh people to fall into poverty.
To his defense, right? The idea why he's doing it is because he's trying to, obviously stall it because he wants to wait until the election. But the deeper part of it is that they want to run on this idea of, we don't want to get the people of America don't want these handouts. They don't want them. They want real jobs and they want their livelihoods back. They're running on that.
But that's not what the COVID relief bill does.
It's not. It's not for that. It's a bigger idea.
What the reason they don't want to do it? I don't know why. Honestly, like they pushed the Amy Coney Barrett, so it goes deeper than that. So they pushed Amy Coney Barrett within the new Supreme Court justice, who's basically a far right.
Yeah, in like a couple of days.
In a couple of days, and she was part of like a religious cult that's really secretive, where there's a hierarchy where men are on the top and women serve the men, and she only served as judge for a few years before now she's the Supreme Court judge, so a complete unqualified person, and not to even bring up her views. But the COVID relief bill doesn't give out anyone handouts. It just provides necessary economic relief. I mean, any economist would, every day that we wait without economic relief, we fall deeper into the recession, which means it's going to take months and even it's going to take months more to recover from this recession the longer we wait to pass a bill. So whatever political means McConnell is doing or the Republicans are organizing out of waiting for the passing the stimulus bill, it's selfish, and it's destroying the economy, and it's destroying people's lives. It's not handouts. It's simply getting people back to work, like you said. And okay, handouts. Yes, you give people unemployment insurance, but that's not a handout. That helps the economy.
It's not the handout itself. It's the idea of people all around America being force fed this idea that, oh, if you just want it, you can have it, because you can sign up for an unemployment check. Anybody can, pretty much. If they want to sign up for an unemployment check, they can, and they get a free government handout. They don't want it. The idea that the government is so stupid that they'll just give me free money, so why not do it? They want people to understand that the government is not there for that. We're not there to give you money just so you can have it. We're giving it to the people that really need it. But since you're taking it, and since other people were taking it, they're reluctant to do it again because other people that weren't unemployed and people that were abusing this abused it.
This is what you mentioned is a strong propaganda line by the Republicans to disencourage any welfare state, like the welfare queen.
But how is it propaganda? It's real. People abuse it.
Of course, every government.
I even know people that abuse it.
Every government system is abused, and it's not perfect, but it's overwhelmingly good. What's the alternative to not giving not giving? Look, even you got me.
You're stopping. Oh well, I mean, listen. So, listen. You have to understand. You can either you either go all in or you don't go all in at all, and that's what they're doing. I don't think there's an in-between.
They're going all in, and it's ruining the economy.
No, they're not going all in, because if they were going all in, they'd give the stimulus.
They're going all in ruining people's lives and in ruining the economy by not giving people unemployment checks. And the unemployment checks were praised by many economists just because a few of conservative political pundits, quote unquote, say that, oh, look at these welfare babies, welfare queens, just because they find a few examples of people benefiting off welfare who may not need it the most. But that's the funny thing. We talk about welfare to poor people, but what about the welfare to the richest top 1% of the country? And again, people get scared as soon as you mention that. Oh, they're like, oh, leftist socialism. It's like, no, this is a serious conversation. I'm pretty sure you can find a study on this, but the amount of money that we know, maybe we might even know a handful of people that benefit off the unemployment insurance that don't really need it, maybe, perhaps. But the real looting, the real stealing comes from the people at the very top who get these government bailouts every single time there's an economic recession. And I'm not completely against these bailouts. They're necessary to keep the economy running. But it creates a dangerous system where bubbles form because companies know they're always going to get bailed out by the government when shit hits the fan, essentially. And we can't allow this to happen. It needs to be stopped. And the amount of money that goes into these companies is in the trillions.
Yeah, but here's my argument for companies and monopolies like Disney and what's the other monopoly? I forgot. Amazon. What? I don't know what.
I guess Amazon.
Amazon. Fine. Here's my theory, right? Here's my overarching theory. I'm no economist, but here's what I have to say on the idea of taxing corporations and regulating their stuff more because they're destroying family businesses. All right.
Okay, it's not family business, but it's the economy. It's not just family business.
Yes, I said I'm no economist, right? But come on, like Amazon destroying family businesses, I think we can all agree that's a wrong thing to happen. But let's say Joe Biden gets elected, right? And he decides, you know what, we need to tax these rich corporations at the top 1% of America because guess what? They make way too much money, and no one person should have that much money. Because they don't even need it. They don't need it. It should go back to the people that really need it. It is that. They need to take that money and either put it back into the country or give it to the people that really need it.
That's half of the story. That's absolutely right. And that's what...
Well, let me just finish my point for a second.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Right? So, when you do that, what I have to think is that Amazon is like, okay, now we're making exponentially less money than we could have. So, now what happens to our bottom line? They have to sacrifice other stuff to reach their bottom line. So what do? They're like, well, we can't really sacrifice our manufacturing, our shipping, and the people we hire because at the rate we grow as a company, which Amazon is the largest corporation in the world, and Jeff Bezos, of course, is the richest man in the world, but that's another story. if they have to keep their bottom line at an exponentially high rate because they are growing at such a fast pace and they can't keep up with it, you know what happens? I think they have to lower their quality of product then, because since they're not making enough money to support the quality of product they're already giving, they have to say, you know what, we have to cut corners somewhere. And to reach this bottom line, we have to cut this quality of our product and ship it out anyway. And yet, even though the quality is less, it's still going to be cheaper than what you can get at a family-owned business that is pretty much dying and suffocating under Amazon. And pretty much they can't compete even with a lower quality product, and Amazon can still reach their bottom line by lowering their quality, even just because a little bit of taxing was introduced by Joe Biden.
Well, I mean, I think you have a lot of misconceptions there. First, you say they're going to.
Well, sure. I said I'm no economist.
No, I know. That's why I'm going to clear up a few things for you. And I feel I'm going to stick as close to the facts as I can without even. I feel that's what economics is. You try to introduce facts where,
Well, sure. Just tell me what you think.
Well, I think the first thing we have to discuss is, like you said, like this idea that if we do increase taxes on the corporations, that it's somehow going to, whatever it is, the costs are going to be transferred onto the consumer, as you said, in terms of quality, in terms of cost, or in some other physical way, as if these higher taxes will hurt us. The reality is, in theory, that sounds like that would happen, but in reality, this does not happen. When we raise taxes, prices don't go exponentially up, the quality doesn't go down. You talk about cutting corners, and you forget firms always cut corners. Whenever they can, they hire as little people as they can. Again, they've tried to reduce their labor costs as much as possible because labor is very expensive. Whether it's $15 an hour or $7 an hour, it still makes up a considerable, eats a lot of your revenue. So these companies already do cut their corners. And when you talk about raising taxes, it is true that when you do raise taxes, to a degree, it could hurt the economy. This is absolutely true. But what you do have to calculate is you have to find a sweet spot, which this is debated amongst economists, so fair warning. But generally speaking, most economists will agree that, or at least I won't say most economists, but I'll say Nobel Prize winning economists.
Why don't you just say some?
Just some economists. Well, I don't want to say some because I feel like this is a pretty big majority of economists.
Well, if it's a majority, then why would it be a debated topic?
Well, because the amount is debated, but most agree that that tax rate could be raised. That's what I'm trying to say. Or that, yeah. Let me explain.
Just like 52 to 48.
Even some even say higher. Some say 60 to 70 for the top marginal tax rate. But I'll get into it right now. So I'll just use one economist for now, and you guys can research polls later amongst economists. But Joseph Stiglitz is a Nobel Prize winning economist. He's one of the most famous economists in the world. And he basically wrote a book that I read. It discusses inequality and discusses how the trade-offs between raising government revenue and the consequences of raising taxes in order to obtain that revenue. And the way we should look at taxes is we could tax more because we can tax in a way that we'll get plenty of government revenue, which, like you said, we can use to redistribute the wealth and put it into social programs, into health insurance, into better education, all of which will substantially improve our economy in many direct ways. Like we have an innovation sector that's growing, and investing in education will even help these firms with more with a bunch of new engineers and new students, young bright minds that will further contribute to our economy, because the innovation sector, like Apple and Google and all these tech companies especially, are the strongest, the most productive, the strongest sector of our economy. No other country has a tech sector like the United States does, not even China, and the jobs aren't outsourced, they stay in Silicon Valley. It's not like manufacturing jobs. But anyways, the trade-off is this: you raise taxes just to a right sweet spot, which again, this is what the only thing that's disputed. Some will say 40%, some will say 70, some will say 50, but generally speaking, we could raise taxes, and we need to raise taxes on the wealthy because we're falling into a deficit as well. It's something we can't forget, and it's often forgotten that when we cut taxes, we fall very deep in debt. If we look into the 2017 tax cut, for example, where we dropped the corporate tax rate to a flat rate of 21%, it's projected to cost trillions of dollars, add trillions to the U.S. deficit. or hundreds of billions at least. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous plan, and we're not seeing any economic. I mean, we haven't seen any economic growth from it at all, and we've never seen economic growth with tax cuts. I mean, we never, at least not any substantial growth to justify the revenue lost from cutting those taxes in the first place, like we see from Reagan.
Well, yeah, I'm not gonna argue in favor of trickle down. It's just, I'm waiting for that trickle though, but it's just not there.
That's a trickle down argument as well. That the quality of the product is going to go down, which is just not true. Because again, you have to look at it from the perspective of the company as well. If they lower their quality, they can lose customers. It's not that simple. It's just like the claim saying that raising the minimum wage is going to bring up all of our prices. In theory, it should, but it doesn't. Macroeconomics, the models used in macroeconomics are not applicable to every sense of the economy. The economy is changing. It is vibrant. It is moving. It's hard to pinpoint down. There's plenty of models people follow that are more specific and that give us better answers to these questions on how much we can tax. And just a fun fact, the 2017 tax cut actually is going to raise taxes on the middle and lower class of America slowly over the course of the next decade. So there's even studies done by think tanks that show that people making like millions of dollars are going to have a tax cut, while people making I think like 50 100,000 and below are actually going to get a tax hike. So Republicans always like to act like they're the tax, they're the Democrats are taxing you and we're going to save you. It's complete I don't know what to say, complete malarkey. I mean, essentially, because that's not true. They lie to you. They cut the taxes. They promise. I mean, it's so delusional. Like Ronald Reagan said that they're going to cut taxes and then the economy is going to explode so much that they're going to get more tax revenue because businesses are going to explode, which is completely ludicrous. I mean, completely like any economist would peel their eyes out to hearing that. I mean, it's just complete, doesn't make any sense. But yeah, that's another reason to vote Biden, in my opinion. He's going to come up, and this is coming from, from again, back to the economy. He's not only going to pass a good stimulus plan that's going to reignite the economy, and put people back to work and give people keep people from getting evicted. Because again, another thing about the economy is that the reason we pass these $1 trillion bills, as expensive as they are, when we talk about the deficit, is because if we don't do anything, the deficit's going to get worse, because then it's going to take us longer to recover out of this complete mess of an economy we have right now. Like I said, the longer we wait, the worse it's going to get. We need to pass a huge stimulus bill, get the economy back running. And then we need it. And this is something not being discussed by Biden, but I think that from the economist perspective, there needs to be a serious plan to how we're going to deal with the deficit now, because it's so huge. We need to have a serious plan on how to deal with these financial crises, sorry, in the future, because they're getting ridiculous. And it's going to keep piling on the debt, which we just can't do anymore. And the Republicans act like they care about the debt when they don't, like I just proven with the tax cuts. That's going to cost billions, if not trillions of dollars. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Not to mention the endless wars we have in Afghanistan that's costing us,
Oh, that's funny.
Sure.
Funny meme.
But yeah, that's the hypocrisy. And in terms of policy, Trump's a moderate Republican, pretty much. Nothing is too radical about his policy, but it's more about what he says, that's more crazy. And
yeah, well, I mean, he's not exactly the most humble guy. Even before he was elected president or running for president, he wasn't always the most humble dude ever.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was looking at something on my phone. I was checking something. I just want to make sure. Right.
Yeah, well, I feel like we should step away from the economy for a second and talk about racial inequality in America, and talk about how each president or each candidate would approach the situation, because I think it's a pretty interesting topic to go over if elected.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you want me to go, or do you want to go?
You can go. You can go.
Okay. Let's just say that I don't agree with Joseph Biden's crime bill that he did a while back. Not very good. I mean, let's just put this into perspective. Bill Clinton also wasn't a dandy dude when it came to his idea of criminal justice, and our criminal justice, our jail systems especially, are super just idiotic in the way they're run,
Hmm.
especially because they're running off of slave labor these days. And I'll get into how this applies to racial matters in a second, because the 13th Amendment actually plays a large part into why our it's the 13th Amendment, right?
Yeah, the 13th of the ban outlawed slavery,
Yeah,
abolished
yeah,
slavery.
yeah. It plays a large part into why our jail systems are like this.
Hmm.
Um, and the reason that a lot of these inmates are working for literally pennies is because they can. Like, the system can say, you know what, if you want to get I don't know, faster parole or faster trial to, hear you get a retrial. Oh, I don't know. They just you
Better,
know
you get better attorneys. You get a
yeah,
bail.
get better
You don't pay
stuff,
bail.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
In return for doing this labor, like making license plates or whatever, making products for companies, and that kind of gets into, like, okay, there's new privatized jailing systems now, which I think is kind of absurd, because the government should just be there at the foothold of every single uh, institution that these inmates are at, because one, uh, it's not any company's problem what we do with our inmates. It's only the government's problem what we do with these inmates, and it will show how much they care about our criminal justice system. And in that stead, our criminal justice system sucks big time. A lot of Americans are getting put behind bars for literally no reason most of the time. Something like a simple possession of marijuana will get you, like, I don't know, a couple months in prison. It's just absurd to why we even charge people for this. And I'm not saying legalize every drug. I mean, some people argue for that, but I don't know. I just don't think that our criminal justice system will be fair either way if we legalize or regulate drugs to the highest extent possible, like Donald Trump wants to. And to that extent, Donald Trump at least is trying to limit the amount of drugs and substances that enter our country unwillingly. I mean, his border wall isn't really ideal, and it's not even finished, but at least he tried. I mean, he tried. He didn't really get the funding he wanted from Congress when he did the shutdown, but you know what? Tried anyway. And in that stead, he thinks that he'll get a lot more done that pertains to our criminal justice system and uh, our views of pretty much African Americans in America, because African Americans are the subject of almost every single racial issue in America, whether or not you care to listen to it anymore, because every single one of them just seems like the same message drowned out in a lot of animosity between both parties, refusing to acknowledge certain groups sometimes, or refusing to cooperate with each other to guarantee the safety of Americans who are not involved with these types of protests or riots, as if you want to call it that. Um, and there's some things like Chaz, which is an autonomous zone that popped up and then went away for a period. It was in where was it? Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle, Portland.
Yeah, it popped up for a little bit, then went away. There's some things like that where I'm like, how does this even happen? Like, they had a zone where you just had no cops, no nothing. You couldn't do anything, and they've refused to act because it's a protest, and it just halts a lot of society's functions, and it just gets messy for no reason. And it didn't even last. Like, they thought they were going to be, oh, we're going to be the first independent state or zone in America, and no one can tell me otherwise. And then it just collapsed in a couple of weeks. And yeah, I think Trump will have a harder stance on that than Joe Biden will, to be honest, because
On what specifically?
on cracking down on, like, the issues that seem divisive but can be solved with I mean, I'm not gonna say that police solve everything, but like it's hard to believe that you know the mayors of these cities refuse to unleash the police on these people and commit themselves to the continuance of society
I
because
mean,
they're so absorbed in the idea it's a peaceful protest when obviously it's not.
no, I have to correct you on that. Well, I think there's many
Chaz, it was not a peaceful protest.
well, no, let's talk broadly. I
No,
think
I think
study
just tell me if Chaz was a peaceful one because it's not. It's the most
Chaz
popular
was
one. It's not peaceful.
Chaz. It's I don't want to get into the specifics of Chaz because I don't know them that well, but I can tell you based on scientific studies and scientific data that I think 93 to 97% of the BLM protests were peaceful. I can send you the link to that. The rhetoric that they haven't been peaceful is ridiculous. It's just complete like fabrications. Like yes,
That's
there's
all
more.
I see though. That's all you. If even
I mean, if you
even if we're
believe
talking about like politically biased media sources like CNN and other outlets, highlighting these quote unquote protests, show that they're just burning buildings down. It's not just Fox News painting this narrative; it's them too.
I mean, and the fact that I mean, and I don't think
And if
anyone
that's all I
knows.
see, I don't see peaceful protests on CNN being blasted because it doesn't get them coverage. And you know what? That's a problem. CNN is really absorbed in trying to get the most people watching their show as possible. So in order to do that, they're like, look at these people. Even if it goes against their agenda and pretty much their party, since they're pretty much on the side of the Democrats, right? Um, it's kind of frightening to see when someone who has no idea what's happening and they're like, "Oh my god, the BLM protests are violent," and there's this kind of goes against the idea of what MLK wanted to do or whatever.
But you see, that's why it's bad. And there was
It's
riots in
bad.
MLK's day, dude. But you have to understand, I can't defend the riots, and I don't defend the riots. But the rhetoric that the Republicans have been throwing around,
It's
that
just
it's
not the
anti,
Republicans. I just told you.
it is mostly
it's.
Republican. Because to bring up that point is by itself a Republican point.
Oh
Because
Lord have
they're
mercy.
no. Hold back for a second. You have to understand. It's like saying in the civil rights movement when MLK was protesting as well. Oh, they're just burning down buildings and rioting, and they're causing a ruckus because that's essentially what they're accusing MLK of doing as well. Even though he labeled himself as a peaceful protester. I mean, again, we're focusing around the riots instead of the actual systemic problems, the systemic racism that's being protested. That's much more
Well,
significant than
yeah,
any
it's
singular riot.
significant, but it's not going. I mean, it's going on right now. I'm not saying that, but the most prevalent issue is these riots that are going on and will
That's
go on because after this election, you can guarantee there will be riots.
well, riots. Well, yes, I don't think there's gonna be riots from Biden's side. I mean, I can't. I don't want to speak on the future.
Oh, I don't really want to bet on that. I really
I mean,
don't.
there's a study that shows that 20% of Trump supporters
I don't
are.
care what the study says. I'm making an assumption here. I'm making an
But
educated
I,
guess.
and I'm telling you, you don't have to because there's scientific data that says how people will react and how people
I'm not going
should
to say I don't believe in science, but I don't
I'm
I don't
saying there's
agree with
studies
that data.
that can give us the data tells you. But the reason that you see the fires burning is maybe if you're I don't know if you're watching conservative media in general,
No,
but
I you have to bribe me to watch Fox News.
no, I know. But I'm just saying in general that the conversation shifts into the right and it effectively completely silences the movement itself. And it's a successful tactic. I mean, people think Antifa is a terrorist group. Antifa is not even an organization. The FBI director himself, you know, the Trump's FBI director himself said Antifa is not an organization. It's an idea. And there's even more reports showing that people that got arrested at these riots and these protests, most of them aren't even politically affiliated with Black Lives Matter. So again, it just keeps stabbing into the rhetoric that these protests have to be associated with riots because the people that are rioting are criminals. They're not the actual protesters. Again, people that got arrested for the rioting, overwhelming majority of them don't even hold a political opinion. They're just there to capitalize on what's happening. So then to label that as a protest is purposely getting violent is absolutely ludicrous, and it completely silences their
But
movement, which is
it's not like I have a problem with you saying like it's a Republican rhetoric that is just
But you
all
know
these
why?
protests are riots
I'm
when
gonna.
I'm getting the same media from left leaning outlets, the same rhetoric as Republicans. I'm getting the same exact rhetoric that these are riots, not peaceful. Well, they can strum up the words, but what they show on screen is to get viewers. And to get viewers, you have to show them being violent because no one's going to care about someone holding up a sign.
That's
I
true.
mean,
No,
I mean, as harsh as that sounds, no one's gonna care. They want to see riots, burning down buildings, and that'll get them views. That's why they air it.
no, you're right. You're absolutely right, and it's a terrible thing. And I think you understand that that type of televising. I don't think it's the right word, but that type of reporting journalism,
Journalism.
it already makes them look bad. But I feel like it's necessary. People want to see what's going on, and I think they report either way. It's true a riot will get more media coverage than a peaceful protest, which is, of course, sad. But that's the reality we live in. But since that's the reality we live in, I think it's more important for people that see the riots to not reach the wrong conclusions about what's going on. Do you know what I mean? That's my problem with it. You're absolutely right in saying that the media is covering it in a wrong way that makes them look bad, when an overwhelming majority of them are not like that. And again, associating the protests with the movement with the riots is, again, it's putting a knife into the movement that's overwhelmingly peaceful, like we just mentioned.
Well, here's my idea, right? BLM had a actual, just like amazing chance to get something really good done with
They
their
did good
movement.
things.
They didn't. They didn't. What did they get
No, no, no,
done?
no. I'll tell you right now, they got a lot of police budgets cut in LA.
That's
in
nothing
Portland.
compared to what
No,
can. That's literally nothing. That's
that's a
literally
lot.
nothing. There's
No,
no
that is,
actual reform for systemic racism happening.
no. There's some serious
There's nothing. They got
no.
nothing done because their
No,
leader, who is,
they don't
I
have a
mean, I don't
leader.
know if it's rhetoric or not, but I'm pretty sure that it's true that she's a Marxist. Is that not true? That their leader of BLM is a Marxist? Is that
Yeah,
conservative? Is that
no,
conservative
no,
rhetoric?
that's true. They did say that.
Yeah.
But
So like, I have a problem with Marxism, but I don't want to get into that. I want to get into like
but again, can I
BLM as
just
an
finish before you?
organization.
But I know, but again, I have to tell you, most people they did polls on this as well, because I've been looking into this. Most people don't even
Polls.
know polls. I mean studies, and most people don't even know who the quote unquote leaders are. It's not like a civil rights movement where you have Malcolm X,
Yeah,
Rosa
there's no
Parks.
leader. That's the problem. Like
I
the
don't,
quote
no, no,
unquote
no.
leader is a
I
Marxist, but like there is no quote unquote
I think,
MLK in charge.
and I think that's a good thing.
I think
I
it's a
think that
bad thing.
no,
There's
no, no,
no
no, no.
concrete idea to hold on to because
It's
everyone's doing their own thing.
no,
Sorry, I don't mean
because
to cut you
now
off, but like
no, 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 you're good.
no.
You're good. But now I think it's a good thing, because now there's no one you can hold accountable in case they do something wrong. It
But
hurts
isn't
the
that
entire
that's just
movement.
weird? Why wouldn't you want to hold someone accountable? MLK,
Well,
didn't he go to jail? Letter from a Birmingham jail?
no. But I mean, accountable is that if the leader does something bad, the whole movement does something bad. And I think it's much more inspirational to see a people's movement.
Nah, I
No, 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 no,
disagree.
no,
Letter
no, no,
from a
no.
Birmingham jail was amazing for
Amazing.
the movement.
Of course. And I'm saying that type of rhetoric is happening on a day-to-day peaceful.
But there's no person they can look to and say, that person got put in jail,
It's
they wrote this letter, the letter from a Birmingham jail, from the leader of their movement, right?
and
And they
but
can go off that rhetoric.
I know, but it's not going to convince anyone to join the movement. That letter is beautiful, but you have to remember, for its time, it was widely disputed, and at least half of the country was very against MLK and thought he was, probably thought some racist things about him. It's easy to look in hindsight and be like, "What a beautiful letter." I mean, it's beautifully written, and the points it makes are just so excellent. But again, we have to remember, these movements, when they start, like BLM, are unpopular. But maybe in our lifetime, when we're older, it's gonna be like, in hindsight, we're gonna be like, of course they were right. Just
Okay,
like
but here's the thing. How do you think that relates to Biden as a candidate?
well, because I think Biden is the BLM. He's the BLM candidate, because he does say
Well, of
himself
course,
Black
he
Lives
gets a lot
Matter.
of funding from BLM because
I don't know about funding from BLM. He gets support from BLM.
no,
I don't know.
he gets funding through BLM because of what's the corporation that I brought up with you last time?
I
Uh,
don't think he would have supported them either way.
let me
I'm
get
not sure
it.
about the funding charges as well. But again, Trump calls BLM a terrorist group. He calls Antifa a terrorist group. He says they're racist because, what about white lives? Just utter bullshit. Just doesn't make any sense. I apologize for swearing. I try to
Oh, I found it. Act Blue.
Act Blue, but Act Blue is anyone donates through Act Blue. It's not really a
No,
corporation.
it gets funneled to Joe Biden. That's my theory.
You're saying when you donate to BLM, it goes to Joe Biden.
Yes.
That's what you're trying to say. Yeah. But of course, because Joe
But
Biden.
why? But why though?
Because Joe Biden is gonna help.
No, it just doesn't even make sense to me. If Black Lives Matter is a private organization that specifically is for the betterment of African Americans in America, right? And the money that you donate to Black Lives Matter should go to directly Black Lives Matter and not Joe Biden.
Well,
Like
no,
even if he 100% was on board and his policy completely aligned with their messages, it still shouldn't go to him.
I think
It still shouldn't. Act Blue should not be involved.
I think we need to be careful. I'm not sure if that money even goes to Joe Biden.
It's a theory. No, it is a theory I have.
It's all a theory, but I don't. That's why we shouldn't talk.
I mean, I don't know. It's like it just makes so much sense to me though.
But
like,
again,
you're funneling the money through Act Blue, which is you can even agree that Act Blue is just there's some questionable things behind Act Blue. I can tell you.
What? Like what about it? Act Blue's fine. They just
it's basically the Federalist Society, but for the Democrats.
Really?
That's what I think of it.
Well, I don't think so. Every time I donate, it's just a tool. I think.
No, it's not a tool. It's what I have the interpretation of Act Blue as is basically the Federalist Society. You know what the Federalist Society is, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's basically where all the Republicans just get together and bask in their wealth and stuff like that.
That's different from Act Blue. Act Blue doesn't have any like big.
Yes, you donate through Act Blue, which is basically the same thing as the Federalist Society. All these rich billionaires get together and donate money to the candidates that they want, or stuff they want to get done, like the corporations, like McDonald's, go to the Federalist Society or whatever. And it's the same thing with Act Blue. A lot of private corporations go to Act Blue, and they all come together and donate, and then all this money gets funneled into candidates, like Donald Trump.
Let's talk about something else. But you're right. But that money doesn't. All that money is not from corporations. I donate through Act Blue to Bernie Sanders, and that guy doesn't take a cent from corporations. So I think I think Act Blue is just a well,
you don't have to take money you can just use Act Blue as a service, but the same thing can be said as the Federalist Society. You don't have to take money from the corporations that are in the Federalist Society, but you can just take it from the people that are in the Federalist Society.
It's merely a tool. That's its essential goal. Maybe
it's the same thing. The Federalist Society is still a tool too.
But the Federalist Society is not, because they act as Federalist Society has meetings. They have events. They talk about.
Does Act Blue not have meetings?
No, Act Blue doesn't even.
Look it up.
No, they don't. Look, they have a blog, but the blogs don't even. They talk about small donors. They don't even talk about very partisan stuff. Anyways, we should move past this.
Yeah, just move on. If you want to do your own research on this, you can.
Yeah. I guess you just want to. I think we already know what our predictions are, but you just want to.
Yeah, just go into predictions. It's a good wrap up here.
All right. You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Well, my prediction is that I don't have the exact electoral college in front of me, but I think I'm not going to say how much I think he's going to win by, because I'm not entirely sure. But I do think I'm expecting a Biden win personally. I'm expecting one. I'm not saying he's going to win. I'm saying his chances are higher from what we see, not just from the polls, but from the amount of people that are voting, the overall climate of the country, the new voters, the demographics of the new voters. What we're seeing is really spectacular. For example, in Texas, there's more people already voted than the entirety of last election in 2016. So I think it's 9 million votes, and then last election was 8 million. I might be wrong there, sorry, but and generally speaking, we already surpassed the amount of people in Texas alone. And Texas is not the only state. There's other states as well that's already surpassed their the amount of votes that they counted last election. And a lot of these new voters are from demographics that are more likely to vote for Biden. Just politically speaking, political science right there. The polls. Some states are close. Ohio is going to be close. I'm not sure. Pennsylvania does lean a little bit Biden, but I think it's going to be close. Florida is going to be close. Texas is going to be close. Again, nothing's guaranteed. I just think that's how I determine it. I look at the polling first, and I look at exactly the new demographics of the voters, and I think that's how people come up with election predictions. They look at the information like that, and they make an educated guess or an educated prediction. That's my first scan. My second scan is I think everything that Trump is doing, like his rallies, are not making him look good. I think it's hurting. Especially, I think his response to COVID, which we could talk hours about, and how catastrophic it was. There's plenty of videos you can look up online if you're more interested. But his response to COVID was absolutely a disaster. We can keep going on and on about things that hurt Trump, especially the economy. That's another thing to take into consideration. No matter who the president is, if the economy is doing bad, it's bad for the president as well. So those are just some political science things as well. But I think generally speaking, you know, there's a lot of damning things about Trump, and I'm honestly shocked and I'm disturbed that it has to be that there's even a possibility of him winning again. It's really disturbing considering all the things that he's been doing. For example, his there's a new Stanford study that has shown that his rallies and not this is not even all of his rallies. They just took 18 Trump rallies and they found out that those 18 rallies infected 30,000 people with COVID and killed 700 people. And those are just the people at the rallies, not even counting the people that that they've interacted with, those same supporters. So yeah, he's killing his own followers essentially by having these huge maskless events. You can find videos on Twitter of people left out in freezing temperatures after the rallies with no buses because the Trump campaign didn't pay for buses to pick them up, even though the buses were promised. So people are out there cold. There's emergency responders. I mean, it's chaotic, really. So he doesn't care about his followers. He goes to those rallies to boost his own ego. He's authoritarian. He's talking about putting Obama and Biden in prison for treason. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. I think it's not 2016. I think I think Trump has proven himself not to be a good president. I think people that might have been the people that voted for him last election, who definitely not psychotic voters, are now going to go to Biden after seeing what Trump has done. And that's enough with Trump. In terms of Biden, I hope and I think most people recognize his climate plan, his racial justice plan, his economic plan, his COVID plan, all of these plans coming together. I think people recognize it. They appreciate it. He has strong policy and it's very detailed. His healthcare plan, I almost completely forgot. We didn't even mention it. His healthcare plan on expanding Obamacare, the most progressive. I think he's going to be the most progressive president after FDR or Roosevelt. Regardless, in modern American history, after FDR, he's going to be the most progressive president we've ever had. And I think people are going to vote for him. I think what happened in 2016 as well is a lot of Bernie supporters who were salty that Clinton won did not go vote. I think as a former Bernie Sanders supporter, as a progressive Democrat, I definitely voted for Biden, and I voted for Biden with quite a bit of enthusiasm. I think he's not a terrible candidate. He's definitely more likable than Clinton. He has stronger policy than Clinton, and I just think he's going to be a better president than Clinton as well. And I think all of these things make him a pretty appealing person to vote for. But with that being said, I think I'm just gonna, wrap it up with a final call to just vote. I think people should go vote. And people on Twitter, or like on conservative circles, are like, "Oh, you tell people to vote, but if they're conservative, then they can't vote." It's like, no, that's not true. If you're conservative, go and vote. Go practice your democracy. I'm not going to hold you back from that. And no Democrat wants to hold you back from that. Unlike Republicans who are practicing voter disenfranchisement through the judicial system, through state laws, making it harder for people to vote. That's a whole other topic. But go and vote. We live in a democratic republic. And the election means nothing if we're not going to hold our representatives accountable after it as well. So I think, the story doesn't end after tomorrow, after Election Day. This is going to be a journey. This is going to be a new America. There's no going back to normal anymore. This is the new normal. We might even see COVID stretch into 2022, according to new predictions. Depends on whether we'll even get a vaccine. But again, go and vote. It is so important. And, just empower yourself, become part of, the movement to just practice your democratic right. And it's important, hold your government more accountable and vote for. And there's serious things on the ballot this year that are definitely going to affect your life in ways you might not expect it. And it's definitely going to, and depending on who you are, it might affect you even more than others. Especially if you depend on drug prices and if you need unemployment, there are plenty of parents right now that don't have, that are not employed. My dad almost lost his job. And the last thing I want to see is people, losing their jobs like that and they're not getting any assistance from the government and just losing their homes and everything. So, yeah, and all of that's on the Biden ticket, by the way. So that's my final conclusion. I know I'm rambling, but yeah, go out and vote this year. And and just thanks for listening to this podcast. I guess I enjoyed it a lot.
I gotta give my 2 cents. I'm not voting. That's it. I don't. I know that long and elegant speech you just gave. I'm not voting. My view on voting as of right now. This is the first election I am actually legally allowed to vote in. I am 18 years old. I can vote, but I choose not to. And if you are not politically versed, I also suggest you do not vote. If you do not know what you're talking about when it comes to politics, do not vote in our political process because your vote does not matter. That's kind of harsh, but I truly mean it when it comes to that. I'm sorry for ragging on you, Damian, but the problem at hand that I see is that a lot of people think they should vote because people tell them to, and it's all about being a part of our political process. And if you don't know what you're talking about, why in God's name are you voting? You should not be voting. Hey, you got your time unhindered. Give me my time unhindered.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's your closing statement. I apologize.
And yeah, back to what he said about Joe Biden being the most progressive president we've ever had. That is only true if he gets his policy enacted, which is seeing how the Senate is going right now and seeing how I think that the Senate is going to stay a Republican majority here. I don't think that a lot of his policy will get through, unfortunately. Even if he manages to get both the House and the Senate, it's still a kind of if only if then he will definitely get his stuff get passed through Congress. But you know, if I had to choose a candidate, I'm going for the Trumpler. Unfortunately, well, I mean, if you're voting for him, I'm not saying that's a bad decision. I'm merely saying that you're better off. Like, if you're uninformed, Trump is obviously the better pick. But if you are informed, Biden is the better pick. And I would be on Trump. I'm on the Trump train just for the meme, mostly because of it. But if I was to seriously sit down and cast my vote, I would vote for Joe Biden. But I'm not, and I'm not voting because I don't believe in either candidate, and I don't believe either candidate will get what they say they will get done because they're both frauds and they don't deserve to be a part of our political process either. Yeah, I'm a bit of a cynic when it comes to politics. I really am involved with and well versed in how American politics operates, and not so much how the government itself operates, like a lot of the minor details of it. But I'm more familiar with the macro scale and a lot of information that pertains to that. And what I can tell you right now is that Donald Trump seems to be absorbed in the idea that all of America is on his side, the people wise, not the liberals or the radical left as he calls it. And to that extent, he might be right. I don't know if I should really applaud him for creating this rhetoric where he says that the silent majority, quote unquote, is on his side, and the silent majority is kind of just a dumb statement, but it holds some truth to say, like, a lot of people in America are just silent when it comes to politics. They don't really care. They don't really know what's going on, and they don't really want to be a part of it because it's a toxic environment, and just merely bringing up the fact of politics is more than enough to turn someone off. And that is why he kind of refers to the people that don't really care that much as the silent majority of America. And the silent majority of America, in his eyes, doesn't like this new radical left, and that idea is kind of what he's pushing for. And to that extent, he's making a good argument in persuasiveness. I'm not saying that the arguments are true in any way. I'm merely saying that his persuasiveness in creating a narrative that the left is trying to destroy America, the left is trying to take away your rights, take away your freedoms as an American, your freedom to speak, because the left will silence you, the freedom to bear arms. That's not even a big conversation right now, but it's still something he brings up time to time. he always says, "Oh, I've done more for African Americans than any other president in U.S. history, minus Abraham Lincoln." And even Abraham Lincoln is a far cry, or maybe is a debatable. He says, which is quite one of the most original statements, or I should say, Donald Trump statements I've ever heard in my life. But he's running on that, and his followers eat it up, of course. And if you are voting for him, good on you for being a part of the political process, I guess. If you're voting for Biden, good on you for being a part of the political process on the side of the informed. I don't. This is kind of idiotic to say informed when you're voting for Biden, but it's kind of true to me. Like, if you're voting for Biden and you truly know his policy inside and out, you're probably informed. If you're voting for Trump and you think that his economic policy or his ideas are more encapsulative of what America is right now, I'm not going to bang you for it. I'm not going to say you're stupid for voting for him, but I'm definitely going to have to disagree to say that Trump on policy alone is the better candidate. Sure, he might be the more appealing candidate in terms of like entertainment value and absurdity, and like the disconnect with politics kind of helps his argument. Like, we don't want another politician in the executive because they don't know the executive branch because they don't know what they're talking about, and that kind of outsider mentality is what kind of draws people in. And I also agree with that. I don't think that this country should be technically run on this idea that the Constitution only says that politicians are allowed to be in the head office, which is not true. I think that the right person should be in the head office here. And vote for Kanye West, leader of the free world. Got a Donda coming up. Yeah, he's pumping out some action right there.
He made Dark Fantasy. He deserves.
He made Dark Fantasy. He deserves the electoral 271 electoral votes. He deserves it. Vote Kanye West if you know what's good for you. And that is gonna be it for this edition of the Political Podcast. I really hope you didn't watch this entire thing through. And that's it. Goodbye.
See ya.